For today, we are going over the program overview part 2 presentation. Next slide, please. So as the EEC sector strategist, I will be facilitating this whole series, including the today's presentation. And I'm also joined as well today by Ola and Julie. Ola, if you want to introduce yourself and then share it to Julie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ola Tomaszewski. I'm the outreach coordinator for the Illinois Shines program administrator. And Julie, I can go ahead and pass it on to you.
Hi, everyone. Julie Sedarna. I'm a fellow with Energy Solutions, the program administrator. And I came from a long background of regulatory work at the Illinois Commerce Commission and Illinois Power Agencies. So I've got quite a depth of knowledge. Hopefully I can help share with you today.
Great. Thanks so much, Ola and Julie. So here's the schedule of the presentation series. We're on number 2, October 30th. We completed the first part last week. Upcoming will be application processes and portal deep dive, which is a 2-parter. Ongoing program requirements. Again, this is we're going to go in further in depth on those requirements that are going to be listed out in the annual checklist, which you'll receive. Then we're going to go into marketing best practices and consumer protection, and then touch on ongoing resources and opportunities throughout your participation in the program. Okay, next slide, please. So here's the agenda for today for the part 1 or part 2 here. And that's we're going to be going over program participant roles, prevailing wage requirements, and program block categories. So that'll be a deep dive into the different categories. So I'm going to first hand it off over to Ola to take over the program participant roles section. Next slide, please.
Okay, thank you, Connor. So there are 2 main ways to participate in the Illinois Shines program: as an approved vendor or a designee. Next slide, please. Approved vendors are entities approved by the program administrator to submit project applications to the Illinois Shines program and act as the counterparty to the REC contracts with utilities. There are many different types of entities that can register as an approved vendor, including SREC brokers and aggregators, for-profit project developers, installers, municipalities, nonprofits, public schools, single project entities for community solar systems, and so on. There are several key AV responsibilities in the program. Approved vendors serve as the contractual counterparty with the utility and receive payments from the utility for REC deliveries. Therefore, approved vendors are responsible for submitting projects and paperwork to the program administrator, maintaining collateral requirements, and providing ongoing information and reporting. AVs are also required to renew their status annually and are responsible for ensuring that their designees register in the program and follow all program requirements. And failure by an approved vendor to follow program requirements could result in disciplinary action, which can ultimately lead to the entity losing the ability to participate in the program. Next slide, please. Okay. Here's a list of ongoing program requirements for approved vendors. These must be met regardless of whether the AV has an active REC contract or not. The biannual report, annual report, approved vendor renewal, designee management plan, MES compliance plan, MES compliance mid-year report, and the MES compliance end-of-year report. I want to note here that the MES reporting is not required for a given program year if an AV doesn't intend to submit projects to Illinois Shines or perform construction on a previously Part 1 approved project, conduct any sales or marketing activity for projects that have been or will be submitted to the program, or maintain a project on a wait list for that program year. There are also ongoing REC contract specific program requirements that must be met, including community solar subscriber verification and project inspections. And we'll go into all these requirements in further detail during the 5th and 6th trainings. Next slide, please. Okay, approved vendors often work with designees to manage various portions of solar system development. Designees are entities that work with and on behalf of approved vendors and that have direct interaction with end-use customers. All third-party entities that have direct interaction with end-use customers of the program must register as a designee. There are 4 different types of designees. We have disclosure form designees, which generate disclosure forms on behalf of the approved vendor. Community solar subscriber agent designees, which manage an AV's community solar subscription information. Marketing or sales designees, which act as marketing agents and or customer acquisition agents on behalf of the AV or another designee. And installer designees, which install systems on behalf of the approved vendor and again, or another designee. So designees of designees are called nested designees, and they can only be marketing or sales or installer designees. This requirement exists to prevent a designee from giving another designee the ability to generate disclosure forms or manage community solar subscribers on behalf of the parent designee's approved vendor. So only approved vendors can add disclosure form designees and community solar subscriber agent designees directly beneath their approved vendor account. And if a designee does business under multiple names, that designee will have to register separate designee accounts for each name under which it conducts business. Next slide, please. Okay, so upon registration, designees are required to acknowledge their business relationship with their AV, identify what type of designee they will be acting as under this approved vendor, and submit an MES compliance plan, of course, unless they are an EEC designee. Next slide, please. Okay, and here's a list of the ongoing program requirements for designees in the program. Designee renewal, MES compliance plan, MES compliance mid-year report, and MES compliance end-of-year report. And we'll also go into these in further detail in the 5th or 6th trainings. Next slide, please. Okay, an equity eligible contractor is defined as an approved vendor or designee that is majority owned by an equity eligible person. And criteria for this includes persons who graduated from or are current or former participants in the programs listed here, persons who are graduates of or currently enrolled in the foster care system, persons who are formerly incarcerated, and persons whose primary residence is in an equity investment eligible community. If the approved vendor is organized as a corporation, general partnership, limited liability partnership, limited liability company, or limited partnership, the applicant will be asked to designate which owners, partners, or proprietors meet the EEC eligibility criteria, and if they're organized as a nonprofit, which board members meet the EEC eligibility criteria. Equity eligible persons cannot be the owner of multiple EECs unless they're creating single project approved vendors. These EECs and their single project AVs will be considered affiliated and be subject to the same development cap. And there are several unique benefits of being an EEC. First and foremost, access to the EEC category, advance of capital, access to DCEO grant opportunities. EECs are also waived from meeting the MES requirements, and EEC designees can attain points for non-EEC AVs submitting projects in the traditional community solar and community-driven community solar categories. Next slide, please. Okay, in addition to the requirements for being either an approved vendor or designee, EECs are required to renew their EEC designation annually. Next slide, please.
move to the next slide. So prevailing wage is a minimum compensation level by county set by the Illinois Department of Labor for construction activities related to public works. And the Climate Equitable Jobs Act expanded, and there were also changes to the actual Prevailing Wage Act, the Illinois Prevailing Wage Act, that expanded the prevailing wage requirements to individuals engaged in the construction of applicable projects submitted to the Illinois Shines program. The Illinois Department of Labor oversees the implementation and enforcement of the Prevailing Wage Act. How to demonstrate compliance with prevailing wage is to correctly pay eligible construction work, each contractor and subcontractor under contract for construction activities for applicable projects under Illinois Shines. You must generate and submit a certified transcript of payroll to the program administrator under the Part 2 application. So the certified transcript of payroll is something that's generated from the Illinois Department of Labor's website. They have a whole portal where you can go and register and put the relevant data in, and they will generate the certified transcript of payroll in a PDF that you will then submit with the Part 2 application to demonstrate that you have paid the appropriate prevailing wage. The prevailing wage requirements do have certain exemptions under the program. So the key exemption is residential or multifamily, single family or multifamily residential buildings. Those that serve a house of worship and not greater than 100 kilowatts AC, and any project, distributed generation, large or small project for which construction can be demonstrated to have been completed before September 15th, 2021. Obviously, as time goes on, that is less likely to be the case. But the key date there is September 15th, 2021 is when the passage of CEJA occurred. And then there's also an exemption for large distributed generation projects greater than 25 kilowatts AC that were on the wait list as of the program's reopening on December 14th, 2021. Again, as time progresses, that's less likely to be the case, but those projects would also be exempted. All other projects are subject to the prevailing wage requirement and must have a certified transcript of payroll generated from the Illinois Department of Labor's website in order to get through Part 2 verification and to get the incentive paid out. So I think we'll be putting those parameters, those exemptions up in another slide later, but I just wanted to kind of lay the groundwork there, and I'm sure there'll be questions that we can answer a bit later in the question section, but that's the basic parameters of the prevailing wage requirements.
Great, thanks so much, Julie. So now we are going to go into the program block categories. Next slide, please. So the block categories are 6 in total. 3 of these are newly established with the passing of the Climate Equitable Jobs Act, which are community-driven community solar, public schools, and equity-eligible contractor. Capacity is allocated each program year by program category and by Group A or B. Group A are projects located in the service territories of Ameren, Illinois, Mid-American, Mount Carmel, and rural electric cooperatives and municipal utilities located in the MISO service area. For Group B projects, those are located in the service territories of ComEd and rural electric cooperatives and municipal utilities located in the PJM service area. Generally, Group A covers Central and Southern Illinois. Group B largely covers Northern Illinois and Cook County. Next slide, please. So the first program category I'd like to highlight is the small distributed generation or small DG category. These projects are up to and including 25 kW in size. They are behind the meter systems on residential or commercial properties. Small DG capacity for a given program year accounts for 20% of the total program capacity. Each project that is constructed in this category will be subject to prevailing wage, included in the Prevailing Wage Act, except the following exemptions with which Julie had already highlighted. So residential DG and DG projects that serve house of worship and do not exceed 100 kW AC. Next slide, please. Then there is large distributed generation. So these are DG projects greater than 25 kW in size and up to and including 5 megawatts. The location of these projects are typically on locations with large energy demand, including businesses, factories, and farms. And this category comprises at least 20% of the Illinois Shines capacity generally. And each project that is constructed in this category will be subject to the prevailing wage requirements with the following exemptions, again, those that Julie had mentioned. And next slide, please. And the third category we're highlighting is the traditional community solar category. These are community solar projects up to and including 5 megawatts in size. They are subject to a 20% developer cap of megawatts awarded for any given AV and their affiliates. This is inclusive of those single project AVs. I want to point that out. And they're determined separately for Group A and Group B each program year. This category is subject to TCS scoring criteria and should submitted capacity on the first year of the program surpass the total capacity of the category for the program year. So if that capacity has gone over on the first day, this scoring criteria is triggered. There are 4 scoring criteria categories. The first one is built environment. So this includes points for being sited on a brownfield or contaminated lands as defined by the US EPA, utilizing agrovoltaics, or supporting on-site pollinator-friendly habitat. The second category, scoring criteria category, is siting. This includes points for being sited in environmental justice community on land owned by a nonprofit or public facility, or in a county or township that does not currently have a community solar project that was approved by the ICC. The next is equity eligible contractors. So this includes points for a non-EEC AV using EEC designees or an EEC AV using non-EEC designees for different percentages of the project rec contract value or total project development work. And then the last scoring criteria category is interconnection status. So if the project is shown to have a executed and signed interconnection agreement, that could give you more points as well. A minimum of 5 points must be achieved to be placed on the wait list. If submitted capacity on day 1 of the program year is below the total capacity of the category for the program year, then all applicant projects will be determined acceptable and may qualify for rec delivery contracts. Next slide, please. The next category is community-driven community solar, or CDCS. Community solar projects, so this includes community solar projects up to including 5 megawatts that meet the criteria to be classified as community-driven. So this category solicits applications within the first 90-day window starting at the beginning of each program year. Unlike TCS, CDCS projects are automatically subject to a scoring criteria. The CDCS scoring criteria includes 2 scoring criteria categories. The first, primary criteria, this includes points for projects that exhibit community ownership and wealth building by having a minimum of 50% of the ownership of the project held by community residents or nonprofit organizations which directly serve the community where the project is located. It also includes direct or indirect economic, environmental, or social benefits, and involvement in project development by the local community, or engagement in project operations and management by a nonprofit, public organization, or community stakeholders. The second are secondary criteria. This includes points for projects that are located in equity investment eligible communities, projects that aren't on greenfields, aren't developed on greenfields, those that serve local subscribers, have a nameplate capacity that does not exceed 500 kW, or are developed by an EEC. A minimum of 6 points must be achieved to be eligible for a REC contract, and a minimum of 10 points must be achieved to be placed on the waitlist. Next slide, please. The next category are public schools. So these are small and large distributed generation projects, as well as community solar projects, which serve a public school in Illinois. Distributed generation projects submitted to the public schools category must be located at the public school or school district facility the project is serving. For this category, public schools are K-12 schools under the jurisdiction of or governed by the Illinois State Board of Education. Community solar projects submitted in the public schools category must be sited or district or school-owned land. The school or school district must serve as anchor tenant with a minimum of 10% share of the project's capacity without exceeding 40% of the project's capacity. The subscription mix must include at least 50% small subscribers, and public school projects will be allocated by group, tier, location, and project size, which you can see the breakdown of the different allocations on the very right. In Illinois, public school tiers describe the adequacy of the school district's funding. The lower the tier, the less adequate funding. Tiers are determined using the prior year's results of the annual evidence-based funding distribution process conducted by the Illinois State Board of Education. So you can see the breakdown both by the group, the tier, and then the size of those projects as well. Next slide, please. And the last category in the Illinois Shines program is equity eligible contractor. So these are projects that are either distributed generation or community solar that are submitted to the program by an equity eligible contractor certified approved vendor, or EECAV. Only EECs can participate in the equity eligible contractor category. No non-EECs can submit a project in this category. I also want to note EEC designees cannot submit projects by themselves in this category. EECs may submit with their Part 1 project application a request for advance of capital, in which up to 50% of the contract value may be advanced to an EEC certified approved vendor upon Part 1 application verification and approval by the Illinois Commerce Commission. We'll go into further depth about this process for requesting advance of capital in a later presentation as well. A 20% developer cap, in which the AV cannot submit a total project capacity above 20% of the category capacity for the given program year, will be triggered if any of the 4 subcategories in the EEC category are oversubscribed on day 1 of the program year. In the next slide, you'll be able to see the 4 subcategories, but those are by group and then by the subcategory, which is either community solar or distributed generation. And then last but not least, want to mention that EECs may submit projects in other categories. Specifically thinking about the CDCS and public school categories, which are somewhat more unique than the DG and CS categories in comparison to the EEC category. Okay, next slide. So here you can see the REC prices for distributed generation and traditional community solar. I want to note that modifications to prices require stakeholder feedback, and advanced notification with price updates occurring annually with reevaluation of the REC pricing model and the factors under consideration in the updating of REC prices. But you can see on these charts both the breakdown of the prices based on the size of the system and the group, and then, of course, by the category, distributed generation and TCS. Next slide, please. And here you could see them broken down for CDCS, public schools, and the EEC categories. Here's where I want to mention those subcategories that I brought up in the previous slide. So the EEC category is organized into two subcategories, which have the same REC prices as distributed generation and traditional community solar categories. So in participating in the EEC category, you are receiving the same REC prices as either small or large DG or traditional community solar. Thus, why if you are participating out of the EEC category and you are an EEC, the two you can look to that are, again, kind of more unique would be CDCS and public schools. And so then there's the four subcategories because each of those, both DG and then CS subcategories are applied to each of the groups, Group A and Group B, individually as well. EEC subcategories are applied for the first 9 months of the program year and are then removed. So any remaining capacity in the other subcategories, so let's say there is remaining capacity left over in the EEC DG subcategory, and EEC CS is full and has some waitlisted projects. After those 9 months, any remaining capacity from EEC DG would then be available for any type of project, regardless if it's CS or DG. Next slide, please. Great. So with that, we've reached the end of today's presentation.